there was a film that was done by the BBC, and I explained to you that I built my business on PR, and we had a huge department because we built our business on PR, and we had billions of dollars worth of public relations, either on camera, on TV, and publications, etc. It became a major part of my existence because we had to control the pieces. And lo and behold, I get a call from one of the Sai Baba people. I've never been big in the organization. I don't go to meetings. I'm not a member of anything. I'm totally isolated from the organization. But I get a call. They say, oh, the BBC is here, and they're doing this wonderful documentary on all the good works and the water projects and saving Chennai when they were going to drought and building the hospitals and all that stuff. And I said, BBC, who from the BBC? Because immediately whenever we would get a request, which were 30 a week, we'd immediately find out who this guy was, the type of people. Was he an independent? Was he really a BBC producer? What type of stories does he do? Are they puff pieces, or is he out to get you, or is he in the middle of the road? How can we influence him for the piece? Because I built my business on public relations, so never advertised a day in my life. So I learned how to control every piece that was ever written about it. If I could get 90% going my way, then I had done my duty. And I said, my God, what have you done? Who is this guy? Who is this great BBC producer who is going to do this wonderful piece on the great works of Sai Baba? And unfortunately, the crew had been here for a month, and they'd opened all the doors, and everybody had spoken, and they were doing this whole number of all the great works and telling everybody it's a great, and showing them some of the shots and interviewing them on all the great things in the hospital and so forth. I said, give me the guy's name. I called up Matthew Freud. Matthew Freud is the leading PR agent in Europe, and he represents the government, Tony Blair, all the actors, all the major labels, all the companies. He's a genius, and he worked with me in the Hard Rock for many years as a young man. And I said, Matthew, talk to someone. I said, find out who this producer is. He says he's a BBC producer. I got a call back 30 minutes later, said, you're in for the biggest disaster you ever had. This guy is not a producer. He's an independent, and all he does is exposés to tear people down to shreds. And I said, oh my God, Jesus Christ. And I got furious at all the people here because I just didn't know any better, you know. And I said, you're being set up. I don't know what they're going to say about him. There's been attacks on his life. There's been murders here. There's been serious accusations about where does all this money come from and how does he build all these things. That he lives very simply, and he has nothing. He doesn't ride around in a Rolls Royce or anything else, and never leaves this little village hardly at all. Everyone comes here. But I found out that this was the most ruthless guy, and I knew immediately that he was going to go after him for something. And after doing some research, I got inside news from people in England into his production group, and they said that they were going to accuse him of everything, but in particular pedophilia. And I said, oh my God, if there's a subject which is now with the Catholic Church now being just diocese closing, and it's probably, you know, the warning thing that goes out. This is probably the greatest accusation to destroy someone that you could possibly have. And I had already defended Sai Baba on other situations, and because I'm a famous devotee, semi-famous, I guess, Western devotee, and I defended him and talked about him at the Observer newspaper in London and the New York Times and other places that people would call and ask me what my opinion was because they'd heard things about him over the years. And I knew they were going to call me, and they did call me. And they said, oh, we're doing this great piece on Sai Baba and all the good works in the hospital, and you're the most famous devotee, and you built the hospital, and we want to fly you to L.A., and can we use the Hard Rock Cafe as a backdrop? And I immediately knew they want to use the fame of all the things that are on the wall because they can enhance the piece by So that's Madonna's this, and this is Paul McCartney's that, and this. I knew the mentality so well, and I knew I had to say something. I knew I had to say my piece, and I knew it was going to be a disaster. They had one person, one American guy who was claiming that at the age of 16 or 17 that Sai Baba had fondled him or something. And they had the parents call me and say, you have to be on our side. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I have no knowledge of this. I've never heard of it before. He's surrounded by dozens and dozens of people 24 hours a day, and if there was anything of any nature of negativity going on, and everybody in the whole world would know about it in the Sai world for sure, and nobody knows anything about this. And I waited for them to call, because they said, we'll fly you out to LA. Can we use the Hard Rock as a backdrop? Will you take us on a tour and show us and tell us everything we know about the hospital and the whole thing? And I know journalists like the back of my hand. I mean, I've played the game so well for so long. I knew what it was all about, and this was going to be the prime piece. The famous guy, the American with all the money, the Hard Rock Cafe guy, the House of Blues guy, the guy who got in the India, built the hospital, gave him this money, was a devotee of this horrible guru, and I kept delaying it because I found out through the underground when their due date was to give their piece over to the BBC. And so they kept calling me, and I kept saying, no, I'm not feeling well, no, I'm not, I've got an appointment. So I wanted to make sure that I was the last one to speak on their piece, because this is the only thing I could do. I planned it exactly the way I wanted to have it done. I arrived in LA. I had been in isolation for 8 years at this point and had gained a tremendous amount of weight, which I'll tell you about someday. And they called me, the producer called me, it's all peace and love and flowers and wonderful Sai Baba-ness, and said, oh, by the way, we have rented a Corniche convertible and we have 6 beautiful actresses, and we want to take a picture of you going down the Sunset Strip in this car full of all these girls. And of course, I knew immediately what that was for and how it was going to be part of the dynamics of the piece and the whole bullshit and the glamour of, especially Englishmen and the Sunset Strip and a Rolls Royce and beautiful actresses and the Hard Rock Cafe and all the famous memorabilia and everything. I knew exactly what they were going to do. So I said, yes, I'd be delighted to. And then I called it the next morning, and about an hour before I was supposed to be on this set of whatever, I said, I'm sorry, I've got a cold, I'm sick, I got a flu, I can't come. So they had to cancel it, and they had one more day because they had to cut the piece, and I knew they had to have it in 2 days. So I go to the Hard Rock, and the first thing, will you take us and show us all the memorabilia? And they make a big deal about going to every piece, so they're bringing in these famous names. Paul McCartney, Madonna, blah, blah, blah. This, of course, enhances the legitimacy of this whole thing by bringing all the celebrity of LA and music and actors and everything. And they talked for 2 hours. I'm on camera, and I had the Hard Rock. I knew what was going to happen. I'm sitting there waiting because they're just asking all these flowery questions and the good works and everything else. And they were very clever. They had an Indian girl doing all of the interviews, so that it was like, you know, this was a local that was doing this as an Indian. It was so clever, and so obvious. So I was waiting and waiting for the question to happen, and suddenly this girl from this flowery 2 hours on camera with 3 cameras shoot says to me, and what about these accusations on pedophilia? What do you think about this? And actually they had a thing on me, and I said, I really don't care. Oh, well, then you agree with pedophilia? I said, no, it has absolutely nothing to do with that. I have no knowledge of any of this stuff. It may be true. It really doesn't make any difference to me. Well, what do you mean it doesn't make any difference? It's like the biggest crime and da-da-da. And I said, look, if you discover your spirituality through whatever, going to a church or to a synagogue or to a priest, and then all of a sudden the rabbi or the priest or whatever goes out and kills somebody, does something awful, and they have brought you to your spiritual definition, what do? You give up your definition? Do you just forget about the whole thing and it all was a hoax? I said, that's not the way it works. And then they asked me a second time, blah, 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 pedophilia thing, and I answered again. I said, look, I don't know if it's true or not. I don't care if it's true or not. It may be true, but I don't care. You got to, and then I tried to explain why I didn't care, why it didn't make any difference. And then they asked me a third time. And I again said, let me put it to you simply. If Sai Baba asked me to jump off the roof of this building, I'd jump off in a second. He is my master. He has given me the definition of my spirituality. I will be by his side at the moment he dies. And then they tried to ask him another question. I said, turn the camera off. I'm not asking him anymore. I got up, took the thing off, and left. The piece came out. It was absolutely as brilliantly done as you could possibly see. It just made him into another Rajneesh, into another Maharishi, and it was sex and it was money. It was the whole thing. It was perfect. It was genius for a man who does this type of exposés and so forth.